How you doing? This is Michael Loyd, clinical psychology student graduate with a neuropsychology concentration. Wanted to finish reading the book God Delusion by Richard Dawkins, New York Times bestseller. He's an evolutionary biologist in England. By the way, there's also some new and interesting findings for longevity research for the C. elegans worm. They've been able to extend its lifespan by up to 500%. They thought initially that these experiments would extend the lifespan by 130%. So that is, if they were going to live 10 days, they were projected to live 23 days. But in contrast, they actually found results that these C. elegans from evolutionary biology research actually lived 50 days. And replications in humans and applied research is now beginning. That is, research that can apply to pragmatic and practical situations for humans that we can benefit from. I thought that was incredibly interesting, as it is the year 2020. These things are very exciting and well underway. I'm going to read chapter 2, The God Hypothesis, once again by Richard Dawkins. The religion of one age is the literary entertainment of the next. Ralph Waldo Emerson. The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction, jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. Those of us schooled from infancy in his ways can become desensitized to their horror. A naif, blessed with the perspective of innocence, has a clearer perception. Winston Churchill's son, Randolph, somehow contrived to remain ignorant of Scripture until Evelyn Waugh and a brother officer, in a vain attempt to keep Churchill quiet, when they were posted together during the war, bet him he couldn't read the entire Bible in a fortnight. Unhappily, it has not had the result we hoped. He has never read any of it before and is hideously excited. Keeps reading quotations aloud. I say, I bet you didn't know this came in the Bible. Or merely slapping his side and chortling, God isn't God isn't God a shit. Thomas Jefferson, better read, was of a similar opinion, describing the God of Moses as being of terrific character, cruel, vindictive, capricious, and unjust. It is unfair to attack such an easy target. That God hypothesis should not stand or fall with its most unlovely instantiation. Yahweh nor his insipidity oppose Christian faith. Gentle Jesus, meek and mild, to be fair, this milksop persona owes more to his Victorian followers than to Jesus himself. Could anything be more mawkishly nauseating than Mrs. C. F. Alexander's Christian children all must be mild, obedient, good as he? I'm not attacking the particular qualities of Yahweh or Jesus or Allah or any specific god such as Baal, Jesus, Zeus, or Wotan. Instead, I should define the God hypothesis more defensively. there exists a supernatural intelligence who deliberately designed and created the universe and everything in it, including us. This book will advocate an alternative view. Any creative intelligence of sufficient complexity to design anything comes into existence only as the end product of an extended process of gradual evolution. Creative intelligences, being evolved, necessarily arrive late in the universe, and therefore cannot be responsible for designing it. God, it's like the concept of a prime mover, except for the prime mover wasn't a sentient being. God, in this sense defined, is a delusion, and, as later chapters will show, a pernicious delusion. Not surprisingly, since it is founded on local traditions of private revelation rather than evidence, the God hypothesis comes in many versions. Historians of religion recognize a progression from primitive tribal animisms through polytheisms such as those of Greeks, Romans, and Norsemen, to monotheisms such as Judaism and its derivatives, Christianity and Islam. So, I'm learning that those religions actually came from Greeks, Romans, and Norsemen. Polytheism. It is not clear why the change from polytheism, which is many gods, to monotheism, which is one God, should be assumed to be a self-evidently progressive improvement. But it widely is an assumption that provoked Warak, author of Why Am I Not a Muslim, wittily to conjecture that monotheism is in its turn doomed to subtract one more God and become atheism. The Catholic Encyclopedia dismisses polytheism and antitheism in the same insouciant breath. Formal dogmatic atheism is self-refuting and has never de facto won the reasoned assent of any considerable number of men. Nor can polytheism, however easily it may take hold of the popular imagination, ever satisfy the mind of a philosopher. Monotheistic chauvinism was until recently written into the charity law of both England and Scotland, discriminating against polytheistic religions and granting tax-exempt status, while allowing an easy ride to charities whose object was to promote monotheistic religion, sparing them the rigorous vetting quite properly required of secular charities. It was my ambition to persuade a member of Britain's respected Hindu community to come forward and bring a civil action to test this snobbish discrimination against polytheism. Far better, of course, would be to abandon the promotion of religion altogether as grounds for charitable status. The benefits of this to society would be great, especially in the United States, where the sums of tax-free money sucked in by churches and polishing the heels of already well-heeled televangelists reach levels that could fairly be described as obscene. The aptly named Oral Roberts once told his television audience that God would kill him unless they gave him $8 million. Almost unbelievably, it worked. Tax-free. Roberts himself is still going strong, as is Oral Roberts University of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Its buildings, valued at $250 million, were directly commissioned by God himself in these words: "Raise up your students to hear my voice, to go where my light is dim, where my voice is heard small, my healing power not known, even to the uttermost bounds of the earth. Their work will exceed yours, and in this I am well pleased." On reflection, my imagined Hindu litigator would have been as likely to play "if you can't beat 'em, join 'em" card. His polytheism isn't really polytheism, but monotheism in disguise. There is only one God, Lord Brahma, the creator, Lord Vishnu, the preserver, Lord Shiva, the destroyer, and goodness and goddesses Saraswati, Lakshmi, Parvati, wives of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Lord Ganesh, the elephant god, and hundreds of others are all just different manifestations or incarnations of one God. Christians should warm to such sophistry. Rivers of medieval ink, not to mention blood, have been squandered on the mystery of the Trinity in the suppressing deviations such as the Arian heresy. Arius of Alexandria in the 1st century AD denied that Jesus was consubstantial, for example, or meaning, of the same substance or essence with God. Alexandria, Arius of Alexandria. Okay. What on earth could that possibly mean? You're probably asking, substance? What substance? What exactly do you mean by essence? Very little seems the only reasonable reply. Yet, the controversy split Christendom down the middle for a century, and the Emperor Constantine ordered that all copies of Arius' books should be burned. Thank goodness we're not back then. Splitting Christendom by splitting hairs, such has ever been the way of theology. Such has been the way of theology. Do we have one God in three parts, or three gods in one? The Catholic Encyclopedia clears up the matter for us, in a masterpiece of theological close reasoning. The unity of the Godhead. There are three persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. These three persons being truly distinct from one another. Thus, in the words of Athanasian Creed, the Father is God, the Son is God, the Holy Spirit is God. And yet, there are three gods, but one God. From what I remember from Intro to Philosophy, or Intro to Psychology, I believe it was Constantine that put the sequence together for all of these sects of Christianity during the time of Jesus Christ, or after the time of Jesus Christ, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as the Trinity, which was done by Constantine, or the order in which they exist. It should be thought of. As if we were not clear enough, the encyclopedia quotes the 3rd century theologian St. Gregory the miracle worker. There is therefore nothing created, nothing subject to another in the Trinity, nor is there anything that has been added as though it once had not existed, but had entered afterwards. Therefore the Father has never been without the Son, nor the Son without the Spirit. And this same Trinity is immutable and unalterable forever. Whatever miracles may have earned St. Gregory his nickname, they were not miracles of honest lucidity. His words convey the characteristically obscurantist flavor of theology, which, unlike science or most other branches of human scholarship, has not moved on in 18 centuries. His words convey characteristically obscurantist flavor of theology, which, unlike science or most other branches of human scholarship, has not moved on in 18 centuries. Thomas Jefferson as so often, got it right when he said, "Ridicule is the only weapon which can be used against unintelligible propositions. Ideas must be distinct before reason can act upon them, and no man ever had a distinct idea of the Trinity. It is the mere abracadabra of the mountebanks calling themselves the priests of Jesus." The other thing I cannot help remarking upon is the overweening confidence with which the religious assert minute details for which they neither have nor could have any evidence. Perhaps it is the very fact that there is no evidence to support theological opinions. Either way, it fosters the characteristic draconian hostility toward those of slightly different opinion, especially as it happens in this very field of Trinitarianism. Jefferson heaped ridicule on that doctrine that, as he put it, there are three gods, in his critique of Calvinism. But it is especially the Roman Catholic branch of Christianity that pushes its recurrent flirtation with polytheism towards runaway inflation. The Trinity are joined by Mary, Queen of Heaven, a goddess in all but name, who surely runs God himself a close second as a target of prayers. The pantheon is further swollen by an army of saints, whose intercessory power makes them, if not demigods, well worth approaching on their own specialist subjects. The Catholic community form helpfully lists 5,120 saints, together with their areas of expertise, which include abdominal pains, abuse victims, anorexia, arms dealers, blacksmiths, broken bones, bomb technicians, and bowel disorders, to venture no further than the bees. And we mustn't forget that 4 choirs of angelic hosts, arrayed in 9 orders, seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, heads of all hosts, and just plain old angels, including our closest friends, the ever-watchful guardian angels. What impresses me about Catholic mythology is partly its tasteless kitsch, but mostly the airy nonchalance with which these people make up the details as they go along. It's just shamefully inventive. And it's just shamelessly invented. Pope John Paul II created more saints than all his predecessors of the past, several centuries put together, and he had a special affinity with the Virgin Mary. His polytheistic hankerings were dramatically demonstrated in 1981, when he suffered an assassination attempt in Rome and attributed his survival to intervention by Our Lady of Fatima. A maternal hand guided the bullet. One cannot help wondering why she didn't guide it to miss him altogether. Others might think the team of surgeons who operated on him for 6 hours deserved at least a share of the credit, but perhaps their hands, too, were maternally guided. The relevant point is that it wasn't just Our Lady who, in the Pope's opinion, guided the bullet, but specifically Our Lady of Fatima. Presumably, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Medjugorje, Our Lady of Akita, Our Lady of Ziatone, Our Lady of Garabandal, and Our Lady of Knock were busy on other errands at the time. How the Greeks, the Romans, and the Vikings coped with such polytheological conundrums? How did the Greeks, Romans, and Vikings cope with such polytheological conundrums? Was Venus just another name for Aphrodite? Or were there two distinct goddesses of love? Was Thor with his hammer a manifestation of Wotan, or a separate god? Who cares? Life is short to bother with the distinction between one figment of the imagination and many. Having gestured toward polytheism to cover myself against a charge of neglect, I shall say no more about it. For brevity, I shall refer to all deities, whether poly or monotheistic, as simply God. I am also conscious that the Abrahamic God is, to put it mildly, aggressively male, and this too I shall accept as a convention in my use of pronouns. More sophisticated theologians proclaim the sexlessness of God, while some feminist theologians seek to redress historic injustices by designating her female. But what, after all, is the difference between a non-existent female and a non-existent male? I suppose that in the dizzily unreal intersection of theology and feminism, existence might indeed be a less salient attribute than gender. I am aware that critics of religion can be attacked for failing to credit the fertile diversity of traditions and worldviews that have been called religious. Anthropologically informed works from Sir James Frazer, Golden Bough, to Pascal Boyer's Religion Explained, or Scott Arian's In the Gods We Trust, fascinatingly document the bizarre phenomenology of superstition and ritual. Read such books and marvel at the richness of human gullibility. But that is not the way of this book. I decry supernaturalism in all its forms. The most effective way to proceed will be to concentrate on the form most likely to be familiar to my readers, the form that impinges most threateningly on all our societies. Most of my readers will have been reared in one or another of today's three great monotheistic religions, four if you count Mormonism, all of which trace themselves back to the mythological patriarch Abraham. And it will be convenient to keep this family of traditions in mind throughout the rest of the book. All trace back to Abraham. This is as good a moment as any to forestall an inevitable retort to the book, one that would otherwise, as sure as night follows day, turn up in a review. The God that Dawkins doesn't believe in is a God that I don't believe in either. I don't believe in any old man in the sky with a long white beard. That old man is an irrelevant distraction, and his beard is as tedious as it is long. Indeed, the distraction is worse than irrelevant. It is very silliness. Its very silliness is calculated to distract attention from the fact that what the speaker really believes is not a whole lot less silly. I know you don't believe in an old bearded man sitting on a cloud, so let's not waste any more time on that. I'm not attacking any particular version of God or gods. I'm attacking God, all gods, anything and everything supernatural, wherever and whenever they have been or will be invented. Monotheism. The great unmentionable evil at the center of our culture is monotheism. From a barbaric Bronze Age text known as the Old Testament, three anti-human religions have evolved: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. These are sky god religions. They are literally patriarchal. God is the omnipotent Father, hence loathing of women for 2,000 years in those countries afflicted by the sky god and his earthly male delegates. Gore Vidal. The oldest of the three Abrahamic religions and the clear ancestor of the other two is Judaism. Originally a tribal cult of a single, fiercely unpleasant god, morbidly obsessed with sexual restrictions, with the smell of charred flesh, with his own superiority over rival gods, and with the exclusiveness of his chosen desert tribe. During the Roman occupation of Palestine, Christianity was founded by Paul of Tarsus, a less ruthlessly monotheistic sect of Judaism and a less exclusive one, which looked outwards from the Jews to the rest of the world. Several centuries later, Muhammad and his followers reverted to the uncompromising monotheism of the Jewish original, but not its exclusiveness, and founded Islam upon a new holy book, the Quran or Quran, adding a powerful ideology of military conquest to spread the faith. Christianity, too, was spread by the sword, wielding first by Roman hands after the Emperor Constantine raised it from eccentric cult to official religion, Constantine, then by crusaders, and later by conquistadors and other European invaders and colonists with missionary accompaniment. For most of my purposes, all three Abrahamic religions can be treated as indistinguishable. Unless otherwise stated, I shall have Christianity mostly in mind, but only because it is the version with which I happen to be most familiar. For my purposes, the differences matter less than the similarities, and I shall not be concerned at all with other religions, such as Buddhism or Confucianism. Indeed, there is something to be said for treating these not as religions at all, but as ethical systems or philosophies of life. The simple definition of the God hypothesis, with which I began, has to be substantially fleshed out if it is to accommodate to the Abrahamic God. He not only created the universe, he is a personal God dwelling within it, or perhaps outside it, whatever that might mean, possessing the unpleasantly human qualities to which I have alluded. Personal qualities, whether pleasant or unpleasant, form no part of the deist God Voltaire and Thomas Paine. Compared with the Old Testament's psychotic delinquent, the deist God of the 18th century Enlightenment is an altogether grander being, worthy of his cosmic creation, loftily unconcerned with human affairs, sublimely aloof from our private thoughts and hopes, caring nothing for our messy sins or mumbled contritions. The deist God is a physicist to end all physics, the alpha and omega of mathematics. The apotheosis, the hypothesis of designers, a hyper-engineer who set up the laws and constants of the universe, fine-tuned them with exquisite precision and foreknowledge, detonated what we now call the hot Big Bang, retired, and was never heard from again. So that would be the prime mover in philosophy. In times of stronger faith, deists have been rivaled as indistinguishable from atheists. Susan Jacoby, in Free Thinkers, A History of American Secularism, lists a choice selection of epithets hurled at poor Tom Paine: Judah's reptile, hog, mad dog, souse, louse, ark-beast, brute, liar, and of course infidel. Paine died abandoned, with the honorable exception of Jefferson, by political former friends embarrassed by his anti-Christian views. Paine. Nowadays, the ground has shifted so far that deists are more likely to be contrasted with atheists and lumped with theists. They do, after all, believe in a supreme intelligence who created the universe. Secularism, the Founding Fathers, and the religion of America. It is conventional to assume that the Founding Fathers of the American Republic were deists. No doubt many of them were, although it had been argued that the greatest of them might have been atheists. Certainly, their writings on religion in their own time leave me in no doubt that most of them would have been atheists in ours. But whatever their individual religious views in their own time, the only thing they collectively were is secularists. And this is the topic to which I turn in this section, beginning with a perhaps surprising quotation from Senator Barry Goldwater in 1981, clearly showing how staunchly that presidential candidate and hero of American conservatism upheld the secular tradition of the Republic's foundation. There is no position on which people are so immovable as their religious beliefs. There is no more powerful ally one can claim in a debate than Jesus Christ or God or Allah, or whatever one calls this supreme being. But like any powerful weapon, the use of God's name on one's behalf should be used sparingly. The religious factions that are growing throughout our land are not using their religious clout with wisdom. They are trying to force government leaders into following their position 100%. If you disagree with these religious groups on a particular moral issue, they complain. They threaten you with the loss of money or votes or both. I'm frankly sick and tired of the political preachers across the country telling me as a citizen that if I want to be a moral person, I must believe in A, B, C, and D. Just who do they think they are? And from where do they presume to claim the right to dictate their moral beliefs to me? And I am even more angry as a legislator who must endure the threats of every religious group who thinks of it as some God-granted right to control my vote on every roll call in the Senate. I am warning them today. I will fight with every step of the way if they try to dictate their moral convictions to all Americans in the name of conservatism. The religious view of the Founding Fathers are of great interest to propagandists of today's American right. Anxious to push their version of history, contrary to their view, the fact that the United States was not founded as a Christian nation was early stated in the terms of a treaty with Tripoli, drafted in 1796 under George Washington and signed by John Adams in 1797. As the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion, as it has in itself no character of enmity against the laws, religion, or tranquility of Mussulmen, and as said states never have entered into any war or act of hostility against Mahometan nation, it is declared by the parties that no pretext arising from religious opinions shall ever produce an interruption of the harmony existing between the two countries. The opening words of this quotation would cause uproar in today's Washington ascendancy. Yet Ed Buckner has convincingly demonstrated that they caused no dissent at the time among either politicians or public. The paradox has often been noted that the United States, founded in secularism, is now the most religious country in Christendom, while England, with its established church, headed by its constitutional monarch, is among the least. I am continually asked why this is, and I do not know. I suppose it is possible that England has wearied of religion after an appalling history of interfaith violence, with Protestants and Catholics alternately gaining the upper hand and systematically murdering the other lot. Another suggestion stems from the observation that America is a nation of immigrants. A colleague points out to me that immigrants uprooted from the stability and comfort of an extended family in Europe could well have embraced a church as a kind of kin substitute on alien soil. It is an interesting idea worth researching further. There is no doubt that many Americans see their own local church as an important unit of identity, which does indeed have some of the attributes of an extended family. Yet another hypothesis is that the religiosity of America stems paradoxically from the secularism of its constitution, precisely because America is legally secular. Religion has become free enterprise because of that. Rival churches compete for congregations, not least for the fat tithes that they bring, and the competition is waged with all the aggressive hard sell techniques of the marketplace. What works for soap flakes works for God. And the result is something approaching religious mania among today's less educated classes. In England, by contrast, religion under the aegis of established church has become little more than a pleasant social pastime, scarcely recognizable as religious at all. The English tradition is nicely expressed by Giles Fraser, an Anglican vicar who doubles as a philosophy tutor at Oxford, writing in The Guardian. Fraser's article is subtitled, "The Establishment of the Church of England Took God Out of Religion." But there are risks in a more vigorous approach to faith. There was a time when the country vicar was a staple of the English dramatis personae. Persona, there we go. There was a time when the country vicar was a staple of the English dramatis persona. This tea-drinking, gentle eccentric with its polished shoes and kindly manners, represented a type of religion that didn't make non-religious people uncomfortable. He wouldn't break into an existential sweat or press against a wall to ask you if you were saved. Still less launch crusades from the pulpit or plant roadside bombs in the name of some higher power. Shades of Bateman's Our Padre, which I quoted at the beginning of chapter 1. Fraser goes on to say that the nice country vicar, in effect, inoculated vast swaths of the English against Christianity. He ends his article by lamenting a more recent trend in the Church of England to take religion seriously again. And it has and his last sentence is a warning. The worry is that we may release a genie of English religious fanaticism from the establishment box in which it has been dormant for centuries. The genie of religious fanaticism is rampant in present-day America, and the Founding Fathers would have been horrified. Whether or not it is right to embrace the paradox and blame the secular constitution that they devised, the founders most certainly were secularists who believed in keeping religion out of politics. And that is enough to place them firmly on the side of those who object, for example, to ostentatious displays of 10 Commandments in government-owned public places. But it is tantalizing to speculate that at least some of the founders might have gone beyond deism. Might they have been agonists or even out-and-out atheists? The following statement of Jefferson is indistinguishable from what we now call agnosticism. To talk of immaterial existences is to talk of nothings. To say that the human soul, angels, God are immaterial is to say they are nothings, or that there is no God, no angels, no soul. I cannot reason otherwise. Without plunging into the fathomless abyss of dreams and phantasms, I am satisfied and sufficiently occupied with the things which are, without tormenting or troubling myself about those which may indeed be, but of which I have no evidence. Christopher Hitchens, in his biography, Thomas Jefferson, author of America, thinks it likely that Jefferson was an atheist, even in his own time when it was much harder. As to whether he was an atheist, we must reserve judgment, if only because of the prudence he was compelled to observe during his political life. Prudence. But as he had written to his nephew, Peter Carr, as early as 1787, one must not be frightened from this inquiry by any fear of its consequences. If it ends in a belief that there is no God, you will find incitements to virtue in the comfort and pleasantness you feel in this exercise. The love of others which it will procure you, and the love of others which it will procure you. I find the following advice of Jefferson, again in his letter to Peter Carr, moving. Shake off the fears of servile prejudices, under which weak minds are servilely crouched. Shake off the fears of servile prejudices, under which weak minds are servilely crouched. Fix reason firmly in her seat, and call on her tribunal for every fact, every opinion. Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than that of blindfolded fear. Because if there is one, he must more approve of the homage of reason than of blindfolded fear. Thomas Jefferson to Peter Carr. I'll just leave it off right here. I don't want to make the videos too long. I'll upload the next video finishing chapter 2 of Richard Dawkins, Evolutionary Biologist, New York Times bestseller, The God Delusion.